So I want to talk a little bit about breathing. And breathing is one of those things that often gets, in my opinion, somewhat overplayed when it comes to singing. In fact, when I talk to people who are not necessarily singers and I tell them what I do for a living, oftentimes the first question they ask is, so what's that like, teaching people breathing and stuff? Because that's kind of the perception the world seems to have of singing, is that it's all about breathing. And don't get me wrong, there are teachers out there that will tell you it's all about breathing, and I don't necessarily agree with them. Don't get me wrong, breathing's important, and if you're really doing it in a really weird, strange way, then yes, it's going to interfere with your singing somewhat. However, for the majority of people, fixing their breathing is not going to fix their vocal issues. And in actual fact, for a lot of people, it can make those issues even worse. So let's take, for example, somebody who tends to sing a little bit too softly and is trying to work on their strength. Now, what's going on there is that there is too much air escaping through the vocal cords when they sing. So, in a very simplistic way, instead of the cords kind of opening and closing like this, we're getting this kind of thing going on. So, there's enough vibration to make some sound, that's why we can hear them, but there's not enough cord closure to resist the air fully. Now, if you take a singer like that and you teach them to take in extra air, what's going to happen is the body's going to go, I've got all this extra air and I don't know what to do with it, and it wants to push it all out in one go. And guess what? That makes it even harder for the vocal cords to close around the air. So they're constantly caught in this cycle of blowing too much air, not getting enough cord closure, and constantly feeling like the sound is light and airy the whole time. So, like I say, although for some people at some point in their development, we may need to address a couple of things with their breathing, for a lot of people, the issue is not going to be solved that way. And actually, when I get people coming in for lessons and they tell me, oh, I think I need to work on my breathing, I struggle with my breathing, I run out of air, my first thought is not they're breathing wrong. My first thought is they're not getting enough cord closure, so they're not resisting the air. So it's less about how the air comes into the body and more about how the air is coming out of the body and how well your vocal cords are able to resist equally, the amount of muscle used to open and close the cords versus the amount of air pressure that's coming up against them. You get that balanced, and that's when the voice works better. If one is taking over from the other, that's when things are a little bit trickier for you. And so for that reason, although occasionally I might pick on somebody's breathing, it's certainly not a major focus of our lessons. I certainly don't spend 20 minutes of every lesson teaching you to breathe, because quite frankly, you already know how to breathe, because if you don't know how to breathe, you wouldn't be living, right? We breathe all day, every day. And in actual fact, the way we breathe when we're not really thinking about it is a pretty useful way to breathe when we're singing. It's only a problem when you suddenly change that. You see a lot of people, I'll just kind of angle this so you can see my shoulders. You see a lot of people, when they take a breath to sing, they suddenly go, oh! Well, that's not how you would normally breathe. You don't see people in real life, when they're not thinking about it, going, I'm just breathing in and out, having a conversation. This doesn't happen, right? So if I see somebody doing something odd like that they wouldn't do in normal life, then yeah, I might kind of address it. But again, it doesn't take lots of practice. You can get someone back into their normal breathing patterns relatively quickly. And so, like I say, practicing breathing, in my experience, ends up getting more people in problems than into solutions. And I feel like it's more of an advanced thing to be working on rather than the foundation stone that everything else is built on. It's not a case of work on your breathing and then everything else will fall into place. No, it's a case of let's work on that balance of air and muscle, and then if you're still breathing a little funny, then I might address it at that point. So, moral of the story is, throw away all the breathing exercises, forget about all of that, and just work on creating a better balance in your voice. Work on making sure you are getting the cord closure you need to resist the air. If you're running out of air, it's not because you're breathing in wrong. I promise. It's because you're not resisting the air well on the way out. And that's what you need to work on, not on your breathing. Okay, lecture over.